Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Missing Link in Your Healing podcast. This is the place where we shine a light on the pieces of the healing puzzle that you may not know or that you may want to view from a different perspective. We are all about giving you a holistic perspective so that you can become your own healer from the inside out. So, Loretta, we've got an exciting topic lined up today. Could you introduce the topic for us?
Sure. Thanks, Antoinette. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about, I suppose the word is really resistance. Why is it that we find it so difficult when we know, even when it's intuitively the right thing to do, why is it so hard for us to sometimes take that action to, eat the food or start the sleep routine or whatever the case may be? So what is the resistance? What is those sabotages that are holding us back? And we're specifically going to talk about a concept called limbic friction, which is a term coined by Andrew Huberman. But before we go into all of that, Antoinette is going to take us on a tour of the limbic system.
Yes, we're back in our brains and in specifically the limbic system, because it's quite an important background and very interesting. So the limbic system is a group of structures in our brain that regulate emotion, memory, motivation, and behavior. So this includes the amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, cingulate gyrus, and basal ganglia. Like, you probably didn't need to know that, but anyway, these structures all work together to help us form memories, respond to threats, and process emotions. The limbic system is very closely linked to mental health conditions like anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and addiction. So why is this all important? Because understanding how it functions can explain why we react emotionally. And then this insight can give us the ability to start managing that once we know it. So just to be a bit more specific, the limbic system regulates emotions, as I've said, especially fear, anger, and pleasure. Pleasure. Isn't that interesting? Pleasure came out as pressure for me. Okay. Memory formation, that is turning experiences into long-lasting memories. Motivation and behavior, it drives our hunger, our reward seeking, and our social bonding. And then physiological responses like our heart rate, stress, and fight or flight response. So this system ties together emotional and instinctive reactions that keep us safe and help us navigate the world. So this came from an article in a psychological journal it was written by Olivia Guy Evans. I will put the link below to the article if you want to read the full article. But just to end off before I hand over to Loretta is just to add that the limbic system plays a very important role. I'm saying it for the third time in our emotional responses, our motivations, and the choices we make. It's like an internal DJ in our brain that mixes these tracks of fear, joy, desire, and caution, to quote Andrew Huberman from his article, linked below as well. So just imagine this, that your brain is this epic arena, he said. On the one side, you've got the logical, disciplined gladiators that represent your higher goals and aspirations, your vision, as Loretta calls it. On the opposite side, there are these sneaky, seductive sirens singing the sweet lullabies of comfort, ease, and immediate satisfaction, or in some of our cases, fear and terror. Thank you, Huberman, for putting that so beautifully. I quoted you. The tension, Loretta's often talked about this, and she's going to again, the tension, the standoff between these two factions in your brain is what he has termed limbic friction. So we've stolen that from him. Well, Loretta did, and I stole it from her and went back to his work. So our brains, especially the limbic system, have evolved over thousands and thousands of years, as we've said before, with one goal in mind, and that's survival. Now, we've said over and over, but we're going to say it again. This brain's default setting for us is from our childhood. So simply put, it often prioritizes short-term feels over long-term reals, as in REALS. So before you think your brain is some relic stuck in the past, to quote Huberman again, he's quite good with language. Remember that this very system also gifts us the wonders of love, passion, creativity, and drive. So this friction, which Loretta's going to talk us through now, isn't a flaw, it's a feature. And it really can work for us, but the challenge lies in recognizing when it serves us and when it stealthily and sneakily derails us. So, okay, let's turn this tension into our superpower. So I'm going to get Loretta. I think I already did your bit. Sorry, Loretta, but
No, it's okay. So as Antoinette just explained, we have this tension in our brain. So the way I see limbic friction is this is the neuroscientific explanation for why it is that we sabotage. Because that part of us that has been programmed by our early experiences and our early memories and our default settings, basically, our filter of how the world works. We need to know how the world works. We need a map of how the world works in order for us to stay safe. And that map is essentially encoded into us through our limbic system. So when we are faced with something in the world, everything that happens, all the stimulus that comes in through our senses is filtered through this filter. And this filter is essentially run by the limbic system, as Antoinette said. And so its job is to keep us safe. The problem with that is that when you are where you are and you're not happy with what you've got right now, so if you are in a place where you're ill, for example, I mean, none of us want to stay sick. So when you have a vision of the health that you'd love, and not just the opposite, I'm sick, so my goal is I want to be healthy. That's not a vision. In fact, that is a vision, but we call it a negative vision, because when you just want the opposite of what you've got, well, that is a function of your ego. It's like, well, if I had the opposite of what I've got, I'd feel better. But when you can move beyond your filter, when you can get out of that filter that's essentially run by fear, and you can connect to why it is you want the health. Like, what are you going to do with that health? What are you going to experience? What kind of person are you going to be? What kind of experiences are you going to have? What kind of things are you going to do in the world? That's your vision. That's the long-term reels, right? The long-term reels of the reason why I actually want health. That's my long-term goal. And so that's not about instant gratification. That's about something that I'm creating in the future. So when you have your current reality, which is, you may have a diagnosis and you may have signs and symptoms, and you have that future vision of what your life will look like and what you want to create and why you want to create that health, you immediately have tension. And the tension is that you don't have what you want, actually, because you've got your current reality and you've got that vision of what you're going for. And at the same time as that creative tension, because that's called creative tension, you set up a second kind of tension, which is psychological tension. This is painful. I'm not loving it. What if I don't get there? How am I going to get there? When am I going to get there? What if I don't make it? All of those questions are part of the psychological tension. And so that tension between where we are and where we would love to be, and the pain of not having what we want and not knowing whether we will have it, that creates psychological tension. And that tension is the limbic friction. And so the filter, our filter of reality, which is trying to keep us safe, doesn't want us to step outside of our comfort zone, to take risks, to do new things. Because even if the pattern that we're familiar with, this is the better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. Even if the devil you know is making you miserable, it's safer than going for the devil you don't know, right? maybe the devil's not an apt metaphor in this case, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, we all know that saying, right? And so what ends up happening is your limbic system, this limbic friction, is trying to get you to soothe the psychological tension. And so that's when you come up with excuses. So I first actually heard of this concept when I started cold plunging. And I went to a festival. It was at the end of summer. It was as hot as anything, and there was an ice bath. And I always wanted a cold plunge because I'm terrified of the cold. And so I did it, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to do this more. But it was summer, right? And so, of course, as it got closer to winter here, I started going into my swimming pool in the early morning. And it was hard. You get out of that nice, warm, toasty bed. Oh, because then some expert told me that I should do it before I exercise. So what I used to do is I used to exercise, and I'd be hot, right? And then it was easier to face the thought of going into the cold water. But then I can't remember who it was I listened to. And the deal was, no, you're going to do this before you exercise because you actually want the heat after the cold. So it used to be early in the morning, and I'd be like lying in the bed. And my first thing was like, oh, Lord, I have to cold plunge, right? And of course, all the reasons why it was a terrible idea would come up. It's stupid. Maybe you don't need to do it. Maybe you're doing it too much, Loretta, because I do have a tendency to too much things. I mean, for sure. Maybe not today. Maybe you can just do like, oh, you did 10 minutes yesterday and you only need 12 minutes for a whole week. So maybe you can miss 2 days. Okay, but then the other part of the more psycho parts of me would go, yeah, but if you miss 1 day, you're going to miss 2 days. And before you know it, you're not going to be doing it again. So you better get your ass out of bed. Okay, all of that is limbic friction. And at the same time, as I was struggling with this, getting into the cold water in the morning, I happened to see a YouTube clip. Dr. Andrew Huberman was explaining this concept of limbic friction. And I was like, oh, you know what? It's not that I'm lazy. It's not that I don't have any discipline. It's not that I'm just a baby who doesn't want to do things that are hard. This is something that's actually happening in my brain. It's called limbic friction. And once I knew that, what I would do is I'd say to my husband, oh, my limbic friction is really high this morning. But because I knew what it was like something that I could identify. I wasn't making it mean anything about me, the fact that I didn't want to plunge. I found it easier to go, okay, I'm going to be the gladiator and overcome my limbic friction. And you know what? When I try to do that too much, the cold plunge made me feel bad. When I did the cold plunge because it was truly in alignment with creating that vision that I had for my health, the cold plunge was easier. And so what I learned through that process, it made me more aware of, am I just doing this because I'm going to win because, that's one of the ways that my filter tells me I'm going to keep safe, or am I doing this because it's truly aligned with my vision? And so it was just another tool that helped me get clearer about what does it feel like when it's intuitively the right thing to do, and what does it feel like when it's not the right thing to do. So I'm going to just take this a little bit further. Sorry, I'm talking about myself now. But a couple of months after that, so I don't know, winter turned into summer, and I actually got a pool, right, that I could put ice in so that the water could cool down and blah, 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 right? Because I was like, once I start on a thing, I tend to do it a lot. And then I started fasting. And instead of doing like a long 7-day fast, I started doing shorter fasts. And what I noticed was on the fasting days, the cold plunge was awful. And at first I thought it was just psychological. And then I realized, no, it's because now what I'm doing is I'm attempting 2 stresses. One is not eating, and the second one is the cold. And you know what? It's not good for my nervous system. It just doesn't make me feel good. And this doesn't feel like health and vitality to me. So I actually stopped the plunging. Not completely. I plunged the other day, but I now maybe do it once a week or once every 2 weeks because it's winter again and the water is really cold. So my point is that the more we recognize it's limbic friction, it doesn't always mean that you have to go, oh, it's limbic friction. Let's just say you wake up and you're exhausted because you've been exercising really hard for 5 days in a row. And now it's because you've got to exercise today. You go, oh, it's just limbic friction. And then you push through it. You cannot use limbic friction as an excuse to go hell for leather. All right. But you can use it to feel into. So, is this, because I know the difference between when I'm trying to get out of something, when the seductive sirens are trying to get me to soothe my psychological tension, and when this is actually just not good for me. Sorry, Antoinette, you wanted to say something?
No, you don't have to apologize. I just wanted to throw in a tool that Marcia Tumno, who we're going to record an episode with, who's also a coach and a medical intuitive and stuff, said to me one day, which is exactly what you said, but the language she used was quite interesting. She said, sometimes what we think is the safe choice for us is not actually safe. So that's amazing what you did there. So she said, ask yourself, is this really the safe choice? Because the brain will go, like Loretta's brain goes, you must cold plunge, because this is just limbic friction. My brain will go, you must never cold plunge because you hate cold. So that's why, or you must eat 2 rusks now because you're really hungry. I mean, she related this to food because we're recording an episode on our relationship with food. So is it actually, for you, when you were fasting, yes, this could be limbic friction, or is this just not the safe option for me right now for my ultimate nervous system regulation?
100%. Thank you. And so for me, when I fast, cold plunging is not the safe option. And when I do have a day where I think, okay, today is the day, then it's actually really easy. And when I try and do it, when it's actually not safe, it's really hard. And it's exactly the same with the fasting. And it's the same with exercising, anything, or eating healthily. Anything that you are going to be considering as a stressor, as soon as you're going into something that's going to add some sort of stress, even if you like doing it, then you are potentially going to activate this tension within you. And so one of the tools, and we'll talk about the tools, but one of the tools is to become comfortable with the discomfort. I think one of the biggest problems that we very often have is that once we have a vision and once we sort of know how to do things, and when we step into the truth that we're powerful creators, we've somehow been blindsided by the idea that it's all going to be sunshine and lollipops and unicorns, and that it needs to be actually easy. Now, it can have ease to it, but it doesn't have to be easy, because it's not really, because support and challenge are always equal. So as soon as you step into something that is unknown for you, you are deliberately stepping into challenge. But without stepping into challenge, no growth is possible. So it's really important, and this is probably a completely different topic now, but it's important that we realize that we can be spiritually aligned. We can have a vision that is very true for us. We can really be motivated and inspired by something that we truly want to bring into the world. It's still not going to be easy, because the more outside of your comfort zone that new thing is. So if you have never looked after your health, if you have never been health conscious because you've never needed to, and you now have a health crisis that's going to require certain habits that you're going to have to start introducing into your life, that's going to be uncomfortable. Just know that it's going to be uncomfortable. So it can happen with ease without being easy. And I think this sort of comes from this sort of new age spirituality of, you've just got to believe it. And if you can conceive it and you believe it, you can achieve it. Sure. I'm not saying that's incorrect, 100%. But you know what? There's a whole lot of steps between conceiving, believing, and achieving. Because it all requires stepping outside of your comfort zone. So for me, when I learned about limbic friction, when I learned limbic friction is a thing, I was like, okay, so this is a thing. So this is something that I can ask myself. And the other thing that was very valuable, and I'm just repeating myself because this is really important, I stopped making what I didn't want to do mean something about me. Because I was just like, instead of going, Loretta, you're a lazy slob, I was just like, Loretta, you've got a lot of limbic friction around this thing. Can you see that that's different? Loretta, you are useless. You are terrible. You're not good enough. All that. Instead of that, I was like, okay, I've got a lot of limbic friction. It took all the charge out of it. I've got a lot of limbic friction. Why would I have so much limbic friction around this today? And that allowed me to just have that little pause so that I wouldn't go down the self blame pathway, to then ask, as Antoinette said, Marcia gave such a beautiful language, is this truly safe for me today, or is it not? And you know
and
what?
the other thing, yeah, exactly. Sorry to interrupt, but talking about truth, another thing Marcia threw in when we were preparing for an episode is, and it's just a different language, but it gains a perspective sometimes that just brings another awareness, is this actually the truth for me? Because the thing is, we buy into these truths,
Exactly.
and it's not always. And out there, unfortunately, out there, especially those of us, I don't know if I talk for myself, that go on a healthy, more conscious lifestyle. I bought into, and I know many people do this, it has to be this way.
This way.
You have to, I don't cold plunge and I never will, but like Loretta's saying, in the beginning, she was telling herself you have to cold plunge. But she realized the actual truth for her and what was safe was not to cold plunge when she's fasting.
Right.
So we get to a point where we're discerning enough and our intuition is firing enough. And that's why everything we do is to get you there so that you can go, am I being lazy today? Because I know that place as well. Am I being lazy today because I want to sleep in a bit and I'm not going to Pilates? Because we also don't want to relapse by stopping to do the exercise or the cold plunging or the healthy eating or whatever is good for us and safe. But what if today the truth for me is that the safe option is I need to sleep for an extra hour? There's a subtlety there, isn't there, Loretta? And it's like
100%.
there's two sides of this coin, and the rim is where the truth lies. And the reason why we bring you everything we bring is so that you can start developing that own inner wisdom and taking all these truths out there and cobbling them together for
100%.
yourself.
As you were speaking, Antoinette, what made me think about back to the cold plunge, this is it's not an episode on cold plunging, right? I'm not like everyone has to cold plunge. Is that, remember I said to you, so before I used to do it after I exercised, and then I watched some influencer, health guru, say, no, you must do it before you exercise. But what I realized, if I only ever do it before I exercise, I'll never do it. But if I find that it's really useful for me and it works well for me after I exercise, why would I not give that a go? So it's that thing about becoming so absolute, because it's either this is what you have to do, and if you do it, you have to do it in this way. And so this is why it is so important that we learn, we cultivate that compassionate awareness, which is one of the tools so that you can actually help you to deal with your limbic friction, so that we can access our intuition, so that we can access what's true for us, because then we can choose what's the right way for us. And we can get beyond that programming of there is a right way and a wrong way. And if you're not doing it exactly the way Guru X says, then you can't possibly be doing it because it's the wrong way for you. So,
and not everybody, sorry, maybe it's just my resistance to cold plunging, but I've really considered this a lot. Maybe it's just not the thing that will regulate my nervous system. I'm a different person to you.
For sure.
But I think also, Loretta, sorry, I don't know what you were going to say next, but the way we're talking about this now might seem a bit like overwhelming, like, how am I get to that point? How am I going to get there? But one of the tools is to just start small. Just take small steps. Sorry, I don't know if I interrupted what you were going to say.
No. I think we need to get onto the tools, Antoinette. So Antoinette's going to take us through the tools, and I'm going to interrupt her when I feel I need to. and what you say is actually very, very valid, right? So we've gone to like, okay, well, this is how you use this on a grand scale. But these tools are how it is that you can start. If you're starting from 0, or if you're starting from 50%, or if you're starting from 100%, they're useful to actually remember and to implement. So over to you, Antoinette.
Yeah, so I'm just going to track back to the discomfort, just to say, embrace the discomfort, as Loretta said. But don't see it as a sign of a retreat. Just start seeing it as growth in progress, because for me, there's been a lot of discomfort before positive change. And that is actually where the magic happens. And instead of, yes, overhauling your whole life overnight, I've tried to do that over and over. And believe me, it doesn't work. Just start with some micro habits. Just change some small things, because small wins pave the way for bigger victories. And I can tell you something, if you've got a mind like mine, the most important thing to do is to celebrate those small wins.
100%.
Because a lot of our minds take us at the end of the day or in the moment to what we haven't done or could have done better. So and that's the benefit of writing. Writing things down is a whole brain activity. So it's very helpful if you can write, have a little notebook with you or journal. And one of the things that's been helpful for me is at the end of the day to look at the positive feedback I got from people and what were the things I did today. They might have been really small, but that were progress, because my mind goes to bed saying, you didn't do that big thing. You didn't achieve enough. So, yeah. And then this
sorry,
actually came. Yes, sure.
Sorry. I want to just talk to the writing. So for those of you who've watched some of the early episodes, there's an exercise called Set A, and Set A is about defining your current reality. And this is a really good exercise so that you can work out whether the action you want to take or not take is actually coming to keep you safe or not. All right. It helps you make a more discerning decision. So I'm just going to use the cold plunge again, because, we were on it. Right. So imagine I've got up and I've done my sort of morning routine, and now it's time for me to go and have a cold plunge. If I've got a lot of limbic friction around, like I really don't want to do it, what I do is I just sit down and I quickly jot down my thoughts. Like, oh, it's too cold. I don't want to do it today. But if I miss a day, then I'm going to lose my momentum. Honestly, 100% truthful. What is it that I'm thinking, and how's it making me feel? So, like, it's making me feel anxious, or it's making me feel overwhelmed, or it's making me feel frustrated with myself, or whatever it is. And what is that feeling? What is it making me want to do? So for me, it often is making me want to push through, regardless of whether I want to do it or not.
Okay, wow.
So when that comes up, I'm like, oh, okay. So now I can ask myself, so am I going to go and put myself in that cold water because of this frustration that's saying, Loretta, if you don't do it, you're going to be a sissy? Well, that's not my objective. My objective is to regulate my nervous system. So, and then what I often ask is there something else that I could do to regulate my nervous system? And I mean, there are lots of things that you can do. There are lots of somatic practice. There's lots of tools, right? And I go, actually, I think this might be a more appropriate tool for me today. So defining the truth of where you are right now. Now, this will not be positive. So the point I'm trying to make is what you write in your journal. And so listen, this is completely, I'm not contradicting what Antoinette said. It's really important to celebrate the wins. So that's one way of journaling. So at the end of the day, you're like, what was the feedback I got today? What did I do today? Like, what did I do? What did I do today? Like what? Okay. Those wins, right? What is it that I can celebrate about today? 100%. What I'm talking about is a completely different exercise, but it also involves journaling. So when you're faced with that friction, just get honest with yourself. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? And what are they trying to make you do? Or what would you normally do in this situation? And then you can at least choose whether this is an appropriate action when you are considering what is it that you'd love to create in the long term. Is what this is trying to get me to do, is that going to get me closer to my goal or further from my goal today? And just for today, make that choice. And then tomorrow, if you're faced with the same thing, you can do the exercise again. So that is, it's a really important part. And the reason why you want to write it down and not just say it in your head is because there's 10,000 synapses between your brain just about and your hand. And when you see it on the paper, it becomes a real thing outside of you. You take it out of your mind and you download it onto the paper and you see it for what it is. And often it's I'm going to say irrational and illogical. And you can see through it straight away. You're like, oh my goodness, yes, okay, this is my pattern. This is what I'm doing again. And this is not in alignment with what I'd love today. So sorry, that was a long interrupt on the writing.
No, I think it's very, very important, this, because writing also helps you to track patterns, because we can't always track our patterns because they're so automatic. But I wanted to ask you a question, Loretta, because do you do this all the time? Because I know you're a very, very busy person, because often people say they just don't have the time to stop and feel the discomfort and sit with the tension and then vision the opposite. Do you do this throughout your day? Do you always write it down? Or do you sometimes, I mean, because really that's a big question people come back with all the time is, how do you expect me to now stop for?
Yeah. Okay. So good question. So I'm going to say yes and no is my answer. So every day before I start, it's part of my routine before I start work, I connect to the vision that I have. You know, it just takes me 5 minutes. It's quick. Like, what is it that I want my overall life to feel like? And what is it that I want my work and my business to feel like and create? And often I'm like, well, that just seems so far away. And I feel so meh about things today. So I do this particularly when I'm not feeling good, when I am not feeling motivated or inspired about my business. When I wake up in the morning, because I work every day, right? So I'm just relating it to work. When I wake up in the morning and I go, I've got 5 clients today. Now I love seeing my clients. I'm like, sure, it's a long day. When I have that kind of attitude, rather than, wow, this is, I'm sort of looking forward to this, then I do this. I write it down because I know that in there, I'm going to find those seductive sirens that are pulling my focus off from what it is that I would love to achieve. So, and if during the course of the day, I'm feeling like I'm not feeling the love on, like even an email. If I've got to send an email that I am when I procrastinate, when I keep on putting it off, I do this little exercise. I write down my thoughts and my feelings and what it makes me want to do, because it very often highlights to me, this is the resistance. And often it's just like, I'm frightened of being rejected. It's like, okay, it's my rejection fear. You know what? I've been rejected before and I'll be okay. So that allows me to actually remove that resistance. So not all day, not constantly, but particularly when I'm feeling bad. Because when I'm feeling bad as in not motivated, not inspired, I know I have resistance. And when I get really real and present with what's true about my resistance, I find investing that 5 or 10 minutes doing this little exercise saves me hours of procrastination, doom scrolling, avoidance.
Eating, probably eating. I don't know. Something I got from Huberman again, and I love it because it was like aha for me, although it's so obvious, but I wasn't doing it. He said, link a new habit to an existing one. So, for example, if you already enjoy your morning coffee, just pair that with 5 minutes of journaling. Creating these kind of habit stacks can have new routine sticks. So he calls stack them up. Do you know how that simple little thing has helped me? Because I don't like writing. I keep on saying that. I resist it, but I know how valuable it is. I love my morning coffee. It is one thing I haven't been able to throw out into the, and maybe I don't need to, I don't know. But if I pair my coffee with that, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm having my coffee and I'm journaling. So it's like, and it's, so that was valuable for me. So it just shows at different times, no matter how far down this path you are, there might just be one thing somebody says that is like, it's so obvious to me, but I'd never thought about it before.
I stack my cold plunge with doing Jinshinjutsu. So when I do cold plunge, I do Jinshinjutsu breathing exercises. And so basically I'm harmonizing the energy of so that's a stack. I almost always have 2 things at the same time.
I've realized I've been naturally doing it. Actually, like I like to lie in my bed warm and cozy on winter mornings, and I do my visualization and my prayers. And so for you, that's not you stack while you're in the cold plunge. Yeah. Oh, you see, we naturally start doing things actually when we Anyway, I get excited when it also when you go down this path and you're not uncomfortable with the friction and the tension and the resistance, you start realizing how many things you're actually doing anyway, and someone else has just put a wonderful language to it. Loretta, I see you do you want to chip in?
No, I'm done.
Okay. So we are going through tools which we're mixing up with a lot of conversation, but I think it's valuable. So pay attention to your internal dialogue. Okay. So Loretta said, and we say over and over again, compassionate self-awareness, but it's absolutely critical that you start creating moment by moment awareness of your dialogue. But what's really important, and that's where the new agey bypassing no judgment, it's just the way it's rolled. Or now you must just use a positive self-talk or positive affirmation when you start observing your mind. It ain't going to be very pretty for every human being, and particularly for some of us. And then the natural reaction, because of my conditioning in that world, was, oh no, I've got to replace that with a positive thought. But what if you can compassionately just sit with what's going through your head? And I've got a little tool now I intuitively developed the last 2 days, but I can't share it because it involves swearing. But it's worked so well for me because it just has enhanced a part of myself, that wild swearing type. It just wants to, and it works while I'm doing my little dance with it. But Simone also, was it Simone who says the fibromyalgia episode, where if we can just put our hand on our heart and just love those toxic thoughts, not like, and that can sound bypassy as well, but what if it's just like, sure.
Yeah, it's just accepting them. Just
But it's
accepting
just
that they are there, and it
on.
doesn't mean anything about you. The fact that you're having toxic thoughts doesn't mean anything about you. It just means you're thinking the thought. That's it.
And Loretta, that's why we also keep on going back to the brain. And Simone spoke about it all the time in her episode, because it's the brain that's pushing this stuff, and it's not the brain's fault. It's just trying to keep us safe in the wrong way. So if we just go, okay, I recognize you. We don't have to freak out or try and bypass it with a positive thought. We hold the tension. Loretta's lovely tool. Okay. Loretta, do you want to chip in anything there? Because the other three are just they're things we all know. We all know this. And it's not what Loretta and I normally do, but I promise you these are so critical, especially sleep. I know that you have to prioritize sleep. And it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. You need deep, restorative REM sleep. It's the foundation on which every other habit is built. And Loretta told me that when I didn't sleep for 2 years, and I couldn't understand why I was irritable and dysregulated. And then nutrition. I mean, this is also, everybody's putting this out there, but we just need to be aware all the time that different foods affect our mood and our energy. And sometimes the fight against the limbic friction starts on your plate, Huberman says. So, but it's also tuning into the relationship with food. Why are you eating? And maybe today it is okay to have that rust, but we're doing a whole episode with Marcia on that. So there'll be more valuable tools there. But just be aware that what you eat makes a difference. And we've also said this always, we said it to process things like anger. We're going to just keep on saying it. You need to move. You need to physically move, especially walking in nature. But whatever rows your boat, move your body. Loretta, I'm done. Oh, except to just say, we've said self-awareness is the key. So you got to spot your triggers. We did an episode on triggers. Hey.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll reference that to go back to spotting your triggers, not to be upset about them, but to use them as points of growth and know what to do with them. Right. We've already said, so I'm repeating it. And consistently stay compassionate. Loretta, up to you to end us off.
Right. This is going to be quick, guys. So just to summarize, right? We have this concept called limbic friction that comes from our limbic system, and it comes from our early programming in an attempt to keep us safe. And so we have a tension. It's an inner tension between the thing that we know is going to move the needle forward in creating what we love, our long-term goals, and the seduction of having instant gratification. It literally is the difference between instant gratification and long-term gratification, very simply put, and it creates inner tension. So when you know that it exists and you can see it for what it is, then you can decide whether, or you can decide what action to take. You create a pause so that you have some clarity, so that you can actually make a decision in terms of what action you want to take. And whatever that action is this action going to get me closer to what it is that I would love, or is it getting me further away from what I'd love? It's another really easy way to do this. And to just know that this is a phenomenon that happens in our brains in an attempt to keep us safe, but that anything that's new has to be created outside of the net of safety. And so this limbic friction is there to inspire us to take that step. But when we recognize it for what it is, it can help us take the action despite the fear, because we can't wait until we have no fear before we take an action. No transformation is going to happen that way. It's about being able to see it for what it is and then taking the step anyway. And so I'm hoping that this conversation that we had, the examples that we've told you about, has made an impression on you, and that you can use this idea of limbic friction to be kinder to yourself and to help you move the needle in the direction of creating what you would love, the health and the life that you would love. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Antoinette, and we'll see you for another episode next week. And if you found this useful, please like it, please share it with your friends, please send them the link directly. We would be so grateful if you would do that.
And give us some feedback, please. We just love to know how we're doing, what you want, any questions. Okay, lots of love. Thank you, Loretta. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.